interested in this aspect of the drugs that you are reading. Vaccines can be another process. Devices will be more into the space of biomedical engineering, where you have CT scan, MRI machine, or all the new age devices. Medical and surgical procedures. Now, how does this come into the picture? So suppose you have a patient who can be, suppose a breast cancer patient comes in with a lump. Now the surgeon has different methods of surgeries. There can be a full mastectomy. There can be a conservative procedure. Now, what is the outcome of these procedures 5 years down the line? Whether this patient survive, whether there is a recurrence of the disease again, and whether the patient is actually satisfied with the outcome. That is the effectiveness of the surgery. And then the surgical treatment will have different costs. So that makes it like you can actually see which one of them is cost effective. So that's how the surgical procedures also can be considered in the health technology space. Medical also similarly, you might have different strategies of treating a patient. A blood pressure, suppose a patient comes with high elevated hypertension. So you obviously have your own, one strategy can be just with the drugs. So there can be comparison between the drugs. There can also be another strategy where you are just looking into his diet and exercise pattern and reducing his obesity if he's an obese person. So that can also be a strategy, and then you actually can consider that as a technology. Prevention and rehabilitation, this will come into more into the public health sphere, where you will have something like a screening for cervical cancer, screening for breast cancer, that those will be into the preventive space. You are actually comparing whether cervical cancer screening is cost effective compared to no screening. Or rehabilitation, whether rehabilitating a patient with something like a patient doesn't have a foot, amputated foot, whether you're rehabilitating with some new kind of prosthetic leg versus rehabilitating with the old method of Jaipur foot, which is the older method. Are those kind of cost effective or not? So the whole point is whether you have a technology which is effective, and whether this new technology, and in HDA, the importance that we see is on something new when it comes to the market, because anything new is mostly expensive. And then something of health services and organization. Here also you have like the health hospitals and all, they can use HDA for optimizing their services. Like whether they should have more of like OPD ventures or more of like inpatient ventures. So that also they can compare and use health technology assessment to optimize their services. So in health technology assessment, you can tailor the processes for all these different technologies. But mostly from the perspective of where the demand is in terms of career, in terms of uses, it's mostly into the pharmaceutical sphere. It's not even the devices or not the other ones. Those are more from health policy point of view, some things are done, but the whole career in the demand is towards the pharmacy sector. So in 2014, the World Health Assembly adopted a resolution on use of HDA to ensure universal healthcare coverage that I had mentioned. And as you can see, this chart actually shows the main bodies across the world which are driving HDA. And the most important is UK, which has something called National Institute for Health and Care Excellence. And any new drug or any new device which comes into UK has to go through an appraisal from NICE. And globally, the other bodies like Canada has a very developed HTA body called Canadian Agency for Drugs and Technologies in Health called CADTH. Then there are new bodies in Japan, Taiwan, Singapore. Those are doing quite good. In Asia Pacific near us, Thailand has something called HITAP, Health Intervention Technology Assessment Program. Australia has PBAC, Pharmaceutical Benefits Advisory Committee. They also have this MSAC and PLAC. But those are kind of the smaller bodies. PBAC is more for the pharmaceutical body. Latin America is quite small, and in USA, even though there is not a particular HTA body, this one Agency for Healthcare Research and Quality, and there is one non-profit organization called ICER, Institute for Clinical Effectiveness and Research. They do some HTA work. In India, we have something called Health Technology Assessment India. This falls under Department of Health Research of Indian Council of Medical Research, and it has different technical partners across India. So in Andhra Pradesh, you have Andhra MedTech Zone in Visakhapatnam, which is something called Kalam Institute of Health Technology, which is a technical partner for HDI. So India actually currently is not looking into pharmaceutical drugs or like drugs or vaccines from a HTA perspective. The work that HTA-IN is doing is mostly into devices and also in public health programs to optimize the cost effectiveness of the policies. Basically, India has a national health mission, and there the policies are used by HDA-IN to see which of the strategies may be cost effective and where we should optimize and allocate more money. So currently the process is going in that direction, and maybe in the future they will use from the learnings from there to go into the pharmacy field. So in a procedure wise, so basically the main idea of health technology assessment is the number one is efficacy and effectiveness, and then seeing whether it's value for money through cost effectiveness models or budget impact models. Then you also consider whether it follows the principle of social, legal, and ethical considerations. Then you see whether it allows for equal access to healthcare and the budget that gets impacted. You do a systematic evaluation between choice A and choice B, and basically both of these will follow this consideration. And in terms of like now, if you are a fresh student or like you want to come into the HTA assessment procedure for a career, you basically can focus your technical skills on one is to see the effectiveness part or one is to see the value for money part. So basically this is for where something called evidence synthesis or systematic literature review is done. And this is where you have to do something called build cost effectiveness models or budget impact models. These are the two aspects where the companies, consultancies, or even from the government body side, they are interested in. And I'll talk to you more about that in the subsequent slides. So I'll concentrate on actual process for HTA, where I give you an overview because the actual overall process is quite vast and it's beyond the scope of a 1 hour presentation to actually go into detail. But how we actually do an HTA, that's the important question. Number one is you have to be sure about what is the population to be included. Now, suppose you have a drug coming for breast cancer. So you ideally would like to have patients, obviously it has to be females, and you have to see whether they fall into the high risk category. You can strategize in that way, like from a pharma point of view. So are they falling into some high risk category? Are they post-menopausal, pre-menopausal? Whether in breast cancer you have something called hormonal receptor status, which may be positive, which may be negative. So you can actually tailor it very particular to what population you are targeting. So suppose for breast cancer, we have something, we are concentrating on hormonal receptor status positive, and then only on post-menopausal women beyond 45 years. So that can be your population for the drug. Then you have the intervention. Now intervention will be this new drug. So like company like Lilly has a drug called abemaciclib, Novartis has something called ribociclib. So these are the kind of drugs which are considered intervention. Comparator will be the current standard of care in your country. So suppose we are working for NICE in UK, we have to see what NICE follows. So it cannot be a drug which a competitor company has and it has not come into the market. So you have to be very sure that, okay, the clinicians are using this drug. So how do you really see the comparator? You have to see whether it's approved for treatment in that country. You can talk to like you can consult with their clinicians. You can see literature from like different literature databases and see what is the comparator. There can be multiple comparators. There can be something called placebo, which basically is like just like a copycat of a drug, but it's not a drug, and it might be in a clinical trial. So you are basically comparing your drug versus placebo. And there may be other like very much like chemotherapy and all. So you have to be sure about the comparators. Outcomes will be obviously one of the outcomes will be the natural units, which will be like where how many patients survive. So overall survival, whether there is like slowing down of progression of disease, so something called progression free survival, whether quality of life is improved. So quality of life is calculated through something called quality adjusted life years, or QALY. So those can be your outcomes. Time frame for assessing. So in normally in health economics, you basically want to see over a long period of time how much of patients or how much is the cost getting like spent over in the future. That's why we do models. Models basically mean you are predicting the future based on current evidence. So normally something called lifetime horizon, or it's like a long time till all the patients die off. So you see, you consider a long time, but you obviously do some scenarios where you see what is the effect in 1 year, what is the effect in 3 years or 5 years. And setting of interest is basically for a country like UK, it will mostly be the whole country. But in suppose something like a big country like India, which has a diverse population, you can actually see whether you want to concentrate on the only one state, one district, or some the whole country, because there is a lot of variability. So you have to be sure about all these points to before beginning the process for HDA, because depending on all these setups, you will build a research question. So this and you will try to answer that one. So the next point is, what does a HDA research question look like? As I said, it mainly the easy way is to structure it in a PICO format. So population, who is the population? Intervention is what is the intervention. Comparator is compared with what. It is mostly the standard of care or the current scenarios. So sometimes what happens is there may be no comparator at all. So like you want to bring a new strategy into the market, like screening for cervical cancer versus no screening. So your competitor will be no screening. So if you don't do screening, so do this because you will identify the population. So you will realize that if you don't do screening, they will go to a clinician late in the disease stage, like in an advanced stage. So they will have to spend more money, and the outcomes will be really poor normally. So patients will die off early. So those will be, you have to calculate the cost and the outcomes when you have no screening also. So it's a, in health technology assessment, you need to have a comparator. Without a comparator, it's not really a health technology assessment. And outcome will be the result we are interested in. So as I said, nowadays, like mostly even in India, the outcome is to predict in quality adjusted life years. So which when I say quality adjusted life years, it includes both the quantity will be number of years, or you can calculate in number of days and months also, but it's normally in years. Number of years that a person lives plus the quality of life that he lives. So the quality of life is actually measured through, there are like different methods of measuring, but you have there are systems how you measure the quality of life also. State the setting as I mentioned, and then this PICO format, initially you will try to do an evidence search. So for pharma companies and pharmaceutical line, it's kind of straightforward in a sense that you have your own clinical trial to first have an evidence base. And then if you have more comparators which are not captured in the clinical trials, you will try to do a systematic literature search. And that is one area of specialization. So a lot of you will see that in if you try to search jobs in LinkedIn or any of the platforms like Naukri and all, systematic literature review and like writing the reports for them is a very in-demand kind of skill that one can specialize in. And for that, you can actually go into Coursera, which has free courses, and like try to understand the basics. So that is one important and one good career line that you can all aim for. Now, this evidence synthesis, I'm using the term evidence synthesis because systematic literature search is a kind of a part of evidence synthesis. You are trying to synthesize the overall evidence. Normally, that is enough, but sometimes for health economics modeling, we also call into something called targeted literature search. And normally the evidence part has two aspects. One is qualitative or narrative overview. One is a quantitative. And normally for basic day-to-day work, it is obviously be quantitative. You want to go into the numbers part. Qualitative is more of a traditional approach where you compare the study methods, settings, and results and give a overall description in sentences. Like you write that these are the study methods being followed and these are the results. So it doesn't really give any like basic quantitative element to your results. So you really don't know like whether what's the odds ratio, what's the hazard ratio, those kind of numbers to compare between two interventions. Qualitative narrative overview is mostly used in public health research where you will not really find too much of clinical trials, where you might not have too much of even like observational studies. So it's used there. Quantitative element has, once you do your systematic literature review, once you have all the evidence base and you tailor it down to like particular studies, like you might initially have 1,000 studies describing similar stuff, but you will bring it because of your like the question that you have structured in, and there will be something called inclusion criteria, exclusion criteria. Once they meet, you will have only a small amount of studies to like pull your data from. So meta-analysis is nothing called, but it's a statistical technique for pooling data. Suppose you have 15 studies. From the 15 studies, you will try to get like different numbers, like the same outputs, odds ratio, hazard ratio. And then you will have, you can put it in a, like a software. There are methods to calculate and you will get a number, like a combined number. That is called pooling the data. And basically there are two methods that are used. One is a fixed effect model, one is a random effects model. Now, again, this is beyond the scope of this presentation to go into depths of all this. But when you do, suppose you come to this career line, then these are the things that you need to specialize and like really be comfortable with. What is a fixed effect model? What is a random effects model? And like how to do meta-analysis and like giving the output. So these are different aspects, and this is what a normal meta-analysis would look like. So you will see that it's there is the outcome here is an odds ratio that they are comparing. Odds ratio basically is a ratio will have a numerator and denominator. So odds of having an outcome versus the odds of not having an outcome. And here, these are all studies. So when you see this kind of line, these are like, you will see that in this graph, there is a trial A, these are the different clinical trials, A, B, C, D, like that. Obviously the trials also are named. In a real world setting, it will not be A, B, C, it will have actual names like Monarchy, Mona Lisa 1, these are like the short forms of the trials. And on different years that are done, it's currently, obviously in current world, you will use latest studies like from 2010 onwards mostly. So what a meta-analysis normally shows is this box, like the square boxes are basically the like the study point estimate, like the actual odds ratio that you are getting, something like maybe here, it might be something like 0.6 or 0.7. And then the size of the box, square box, actually shows the weight of the study. Like basically how many, it means that there are more number of samples in the study. When I say samples, it means more patients. And when you have this horizontal line crossing this box, sorry, it means that this study is quite robust. It actually has a lot of, like, more the number of samples or more the population, it's a better study. So it has a good amount of population, and when it shows this line, it basically shows that you have a point estimate and you have a 95% confidence interval around this point estimate. So narrower this horizontal line, better it is. That means says that your point estimate is quite robust point. You don't have too much of uncertainty in the data. Something like this line, this square is smaller and this has a wider confidence interval. That means you are not really certain that your actual estimate is very much into this number. There is a big uncertainty. If you repeat the same study, like in a primary setting, then your point estimate might fall anywhere between this this extreme point on the left and extreme point on the right. That is what is called uncertainty and a 95% confidence interval. So basically you will have all these odds ratio point estimates, and that will be tailored and pulled into a combined odds ratio, and this will be shown like a diamond shape box, and this will give you a number, so 0.78. And this vertical line which crosses is the line of like no statistical significance. So if any study crosses this line, that means that there is no, statistically there is no difference between the like intervention and the comparator. Those studies are kind of, I'll not say useless, but those says that there is no effect, new effect of the drug which is due to the new drug. This if you see any effect, it might be only due to chance. It's not really due to the actual scientific power of or scientific ability of the drug. So the good studies in from a point of view are this one. This doesn't cross the vertical line, and I think most of the studies actually cross this vertical line. So, and this one, this is a like a good study. So ultimately you will have combined odds ratio, and this one shows that since it's 0.78, that means this is 1. So it means that 1 minus 0.78 or 22%, you can say 22% like reduction in the, suppose this means that reduction in blood pressure. So the new, this overall this drug effect, this has a 22% reduction in blood pressure if it's a blood pressure hypertension medicine. So that's how you get one number, and this number then will be used for something that we used in a cost effectiveness model, because in a cost effectiveness model we have our clinical trial going on, and we know that our drug has shown some effect against placebo. So meta-analysis also has something beyond meta-analysis called network meta-analysis, where we use this kind of information from meta-analysis, and then there are like you build a network and then use these numbers to compare and predict the cost effectiveness. So this is one line, systematic review and meta-analysis, and even beyond network meta-analysis, one line where students or freshers, you can actually concentrate for your career. Now I'll come to the other aspect, which is the modeling or economic modeling or health economics modeling for HDA. And my specialization is actually in health economics modeling, not in the evidence synthesis part. So when I say about modeling, so model, what does a model mean and why do we need a model? So model is basically an abstract representation of an item or concept. Basically you have a real world scenario and we try to simplify it within some parameters and try to predict the future in a sense based on that model. And there is this famous mathematician or statistician, George Box, who said that all models are wrong, some are useful, which is kind of true, because even when we build our models, our models have a lot of inputs coming into into it. And these are all like if you put different inputs, you will get different outputs, right? So there is an uncertainty inherent in all models, and you will have the like the way you structure your model. If you tweak the structure a little bit, your whole outcome will change. So you can anyone can comment that your model is not something that is correct. You should have done the structure a little bit differently. So that is true, but ultimately there are guidelines across all countries, and you do try to follow the guidelines and try to make it as robust as possible. And in fact, it's quite an evolved field now. In India, it's still an evolving field, but for pharma companies, and like developed countries, it's quite an evolved field, and there are very particular guidelines that one has to follow. And what does the cost effectiveness story actually looks like? So our product, when I say our product, like currently I'm working in Lilly, so it's like Lilly has a drug or a product. It normally the basic science of the drug is that it suppose affects an enzyme or it affects a gene. Something for non-small cell lung cancer, there is a gene called EGFR positive. So it affects that gene. Now this reduces a clinical marker. So again, there is like Ki67 and all, where if it reduces Ki67 is a protein or a clinical marker, which especially like importance is there in breast cancer. It's a because it's a protein, it amplifies the cancer spread. So if you reduce this, that means your drug is working. So that's how like these drugs clinical effectiveness are measured in clinical trials. Then because it's a new drug, you would also reduces adverse disease events. Normally in chemotherapy or the older therapies, they have a lot of like adverse events, like nausea and vomiting are quite, you might have read quite a few of the drugs have nausea, vomiting, but many of the drugs will have very serious events also. So normally newer drugs will have reduced adverse events. Then ultimately this, because of all these things, it results in cost savings and quality gains. Quality gains you can expect because it's a newer drug, patients live longer, so quantity of life is more. Quality of life will be better because your disease progression is slower, so you can expect that quality gains will be there. Cost savings might not be the truth. It might, in fact, new drugs are more expensive, but that's why what one tries to see is whether a new drug is worth it, whether there is value in giving extra money for the extra quality gains. That's where the cost effectiveness part comes in. Cost savings would be and quality gains would be like the most idealistic scenario, which normally doesn't happen. It will be like more money you have to give, but you have to also see whether the extra quality gains is worth the extra money that is given. And that's how you try to put an argument from a value perspective of a company. And the decision maker looks at it from that scenario. Like for the COVID vaccine, you see that something like a Moderna says that 94% efficacy. Now is 94% efficacy worth it for like a drug for their vaccine to be priced at $20, or should the price come down to $5 and then it will be effective, cost effective? So that's the question that really is which tries to get answered through the cost effectiveness models. So why does modeling help, or where is modeling used? One is required for pricing and reimbursement. So obviously, like I said, for the Moderna one, you the company will try to ask for a price, and based on these models, the payer, which is like a government body or the professional bodies, they will ask for reduction in price, and there will be negotiations. There will be reimbursement also. Reimbursement happens when someone already pays, and then if it's cost effective, then the insurance mechanism or the company or the government pays it back. Like in India now, Ayushman Bharat or PMJ, Prime Minister's Ayushman Bharat Yojana, which has started, that is more from a reimbursement scheme. So you will have the hospitals doing the surgeries and all, and then the government will reimburse the private hospitals, and the patients will basically get covered for up to 5 lakhs. So that is that is actually being now tested with health technology assessment procedure, whether the reimbursement amount that private hospitals ask, whether it is value for money or cost effective. From pharma point of view, payers like NICE in UK, CADTH, this is in Canada, SUKL, this is in Czech Republic. They are interested to know if the new drug is cost effective. And if it is not cost effective, they actually don't get reimbursed or approval. Like there is this cancer drug called sorafenib, and in UK you can actually get the actual appraisal. So suppose after this presentation, if you Google NICE TA 189, And then you will actually get this appraisal. You can go and read up about how the whole appraisal was done. So it's in public domain. So there is the committee. So committee is formed to evaluate cost effectiveness. They concluded that sorafenib was not a cost effective use of National Health Service NHS resources at the usual range of ICERs, which is 20,000 pounds to 30,000 pounds per quality. ICER is the threshold where you actually try to see whether there is if the new drug falls below this threshold, which is the 20,000, suppose 20,000 per quality. That means if for a society like UK, which is a developed country, they are willing to pay 20,000 pounds for one quality gain. So if that is not satisfied, then they will not reimburse or give approval to the drug. And this is like this is the website that is there, nice.org.uk, and you will get all the different technical appraisals, and you can actually read about their guidelines and all. Most of the countries, even India, DHR and all, when they started, they all followed a nice example because they are the most evolved body. Then when you say have modeling for HDA, there are why we do, there are these reasons are there. So normally we can theoretically, we can say that from the clinical trial, you can put in some like cost into the intervention and comparator and get the outcome from the trial itself. But the problem is, as I said, in a particular setting, you might not have the comparator relevant to that setting from the trial. So most of the trials will be a drug versus placebo. But actually in the clinical setting, doctors are actually using some drugs. Those may be generics. Those may be some new drugs. So you have to include all the comparators into the model. So models have the flexibility to extend to a full set of comparators. Trial is very limited in a sense, so you have to see whether there are other evidence, and these evidence actually come from the evidence synthesis that I described. So models provide a framework for synthesis and reflect all the appropriate evidence. And in trials will be for short time horizon, right? So you have the COVID vaccine trials. Now the trials that are for COVID are only like they started around March this year, and like you are getting already the approvals and results by end of this year. So it's quite short. But models actually can predict the outcomes for a long time period based on this trial and evidence synthesis numbers. So obviously these are, it's because it's a model and you have to like, it's a predictive model in a sense. You have inputs and which are giving outputs. So obviously you might get a wide range of scenarios, but that's where the whole clinical value also comes in from clinicians. They also come into these committees and they see whether it makes sense what the models are predicting. So models actually have these advantages. Again, it's beyond the scope of this presentation to go in depth into the models, but what you can expect from literature, or if you just read health technology assessment models, health economics models, you will mostly find that most of the literature or the kind of models that are there are either decision tree, Markov models, combination of these two. So it starts with decision tree and goes into Markov models. Something called partition survival models. These are for oncology, because cancer drugs are very much a big research area for all pharmaceutical companies. These can be considered a subpart of Markov models, but now they are considered quite independently, quite their own domain. And these actually are kind of cohort models. So when I say cohort, it means basically you consider, suppose 1,000 patients together having same characteristics, and you follow up these 1,000 patients over a period of time. That's how these models work. It doesn't really come into individual patient, like how one particular patient is behaving. So there are particular other kinds of modeling which goes into this individual patient level modeling aspect. And this is a very, very like advanced level calculation and skill set that is required. Most of the work that is done in industry and consultancy is includes this part, partition survival, Markov decision tree, or like basically a combination of these two. So I'll show some examples how it looks like. So decision tree is like how, like there are branches, like how a tree has branches. So decision tree also looks like something like this. This is the most simple one that you can ever find. Actually, you'll not have something like this for actual company submissions. It will be a little bit complicated. But in acute diseases or diseases which have only for a short period of time, like infectious diseases, malaria, typhoid, all these kind of diseases which are due to infections of bacteria or viruses, you normally have a decision tree which are used. You have a target population, and these are nodes. So you decide on this node. So this is called a decision node, and you can see that the shapes are different. Decision node is of square one. Then there is this choice node. So you have a choice between intervention A and intervention B, or like a comparator basically. So the choice is made. So this is a choice node. And then there is this terminal or outcome node, which are triangular in shape. So basically, you can see that there is a target population. You have an intervention A and B, or intervention A or comparator B. And then if you use this drug, the patients will be either disease free or they will die. Even in this, they will be disease free and dying. So how does the difference come in? So difference comes in, so basically when you take this drug, there is a probability of being disease free, or there is a probability of dying. Okay, so probability follows a range of 0 to 1. So normally you will expect that a newer intervention will have a higher probability of being disease free. So you might expect that 90% of the patients will be disease free and only 10% will die. In intervention B, you will have like 60% of patients disease free and 40% die. So these actually gives this probability is one important feature which gives the difference in effectiveness. And then you will have the cost, and that you have to calculate what if the patients are disease free, what is the cost for that. And if they die, basically you consider it zero, because a dead person has, like, you don't have any cost in this thing. But and when I say the quality of life, a dead person is zero. There is no quality of life. He is dead. And a disease-free person, you can say like maximum maybe 1, or like you can say 0.9. So this is how you will start calculating with this kind of an outcome that is there for this. And then with the probability will mix, and you will come and calculate backwards. And then finally you will have a value here. And similarly, you'll calculate from here, you will have a value there. And the ratio between the two is incremental cost effectiveness ratio, or the ICER ratio within the threshold. And you can make a decision there based on that. So that is how a decision tree is used. It's simple enough to calculate, but when the branches become huge, then for manually calculating, it's difficult. And you need software, like there are softwares called triads, there's like even in R, but mostly in industry and consultancy, Excel is the bread and butter kind of software. So skills in Excel and the coding in Excel, which is the visual basic part, VBA. Excel plus VBA is very important in modeling. Then you have Markov models. So in Markov models, as compared to decision tree, Markov models are for chronic diseases. So all the diseases like hypertension, or like osteoporosis, and like chronically which happens like diabetes, you use something called Markov models. For this example, suppose you have osteoporotic patients, which osteoporosis means basically your calcium level of your bone becomes less and your bones become porous. So there is like, especially for postmenopausal women, this is quite maybe common. So they have their chances of fracture is easy. So you can have one health state where their patients are healthy and they have no history of fracture. They may get fractured. Then how is the condition in post fracture? These are all health state. So you can get data from these things. And from patients may die off from any of these health states. So in a Markov model, the interesting part is you may have patients staying in the same health state for a prolonged period of time, which is shown by this arrow. So this means that patients are staying in this health state. Similarly, in like post-fracture, patients are staying. When they have a fracture, this is like a square box, and this is an event which occurs. So patients experience an event and they may go to post-fracture, or they may go into the fractured case again. So patients have an event, so they don't stay in this event, because once you have fracture, you immediately on the next day you can say it's a post fracture this thing. So and then you have treatment where what is like, suppose you have made surgery, whether this or you are putting an implant, whether an implant is better than a different kind of implant. Titanium implant is better than ceramic implant, those kind of things. I'm not a surgeon, but I'm just giving an example. Or suppose some medicines prevent fractures, like makes your calcium density more, all those kind of things. So those can be calculated, the intervention, like the effectiveness, clinic cost effectiveness based on those parameters. And these lines that you see, these arrows, these are the probability of going from no history of fracture to death, probability of no history of fracture to going to fracture, and all that kind of stage. And you will see that obviously from death, there is no arrow because once you are dead, you are dead. So all the lines come into death stage, and this is called an absorbing state. So finally, over a period of, like suppose in a cost effectiveness model, when you follow a time horizon of 20 years, you can expect if the patients are all, the cohort has started from, we have calculated the cohort of patients from 60 years. You can expect, suppose all patients die off in 80 years. So that is an absorbing state. And normally death is that one. And in your Markov model, when you structure a Markov model, this is one of the most important like health state that you need to include. Even for diseases where there is no direct death due to the disease, even for fracture, you may expect that they will not die off, but you will get from World Health Organization database or like country government database, what is the probability of a person dying in India. Like in India, if a new a male baby is born, he can expect to live up to 68 years. That is the life probability of a person in India, average. For females, no, I think males is 64 and females is 68. So those numbers actually are calculated in probability of dying from this kind of health states. And those are the things that are external to any clinical trial. Those are the external information that you have to see from something during the evidence synthesis part. So other than systematic reviews, these are targeted reviews for your health economics models. Then a part similar to Markov model is for oncology, it's called PSM or partition survival model. In partition survival model, our main focus is two things. One is the overall survival, whether the patients are living longer, and whether their cancer is being, like the disease progression is slower or progression free, how much time they are living. So you'll normally find three health states: progression free, how much of time they stay in that health state. And once from that, they will go to progress disease. So they may stay in progress disease for some time, and then basically patients can die off due to the cancer or due to any other reason, and they will come to a dead state. And once you are dead, you will stay dead. So this is partition survival model, and this is very much used for oncology. It's a kind of Markov, but now it's its own independent like methodology of calculations are there. Combination of decision tree and Markov model is there where something like you start off with an infectious disease, and then you go into something where the patients are experiencing chronic conditions. Like for even for COVID, I can imagine in future some of the COVID models will look like a combination of decision tree and Markov. Like you have COVID, you have some recovery by 14 years, you test negative in RT-PCR, but then you have complications or you have weakness, you have some kind of like problems going on even in 3 years down the line. So that can be, those kind of things can be modeled in a combination model. So an individual population model is something obviously much beyond the scope of this one, but it mostly here you can see that we have a cohort of patients that we are following. There you will have one patient and what this one individual patient is experiencing when he goes to a doctor or he gets a treatment. That is followed. It's and there are specialized softwares for that. Normally, all these other cohort-based models are typically done in Excel and VBA. So that's basically what is cost effectiveness model. A particular model that is not really scientific but more of a financial model is budget impact model, where based on the costs and like the impact due to the number of population that you have, epidemiology parameters, you try to show if a payer has certain budget like $1 million, then how much of their budget will go in if the new drug comes into their market. So that is also used, but mostly the scientific and the more robust modeling method that is important is cost effectiveness models. And yes, so that is pretty much it for my talk in this fundamentals of health technology assessment. And if you have any questions.
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir. I think you are in time and continue the session.
Okay.
Delegates, we are expecting questions from you. So what are the current opportunities providing by HDA, sir, in corporate sector?
Okay, so corporate sector in India, what the corporate sector mainly looks into, you can say two things, or like two divisions you can say. One is the pharma companies themselves, one is consultancies. So pharma companies which have a proper HDA setup in India is Eli Lilly, where I'm working. Novartis, I had worked. So Novartis Hyderabad has a proper HDA setup. Eli Lilly has. Some companies like Abbott or Pfizer and I think 3M and all those companies have a smaller setup, but our companies, these companies actually have work which you do globally. So I have worked for all different countries, including UK, Canada and all. So that is the pharma side of things. From a consulting point of view, you have IQVIA. I think Akriti, she might have taken a session. So she is working in IQVIA currently. IQVIA is there, Parexel is there. So these companies have offices in Gurgaon, in Bangalore, in Hyderabad. Then there is an organization called Bresmed, BRESMED. Then there is DRG, Decision Resources Group. So there are like consultancies are more in India. So there is one company called Icon in Bangalore, ICON. These are all multinational consultancies. So their head offices will be in London, Boston, New York, and they have an office in the metro cities in India. And all these companies work for the big pharmaceutical companies. So there is actually really a good demand for this line because you need skills. Very honestly, the main thing is skills. So the demand is quite high in terms of skills. And if you satisfy this demand, you will have a really good career in this line because it's an evolving field and it will be mandatory even from the government perspective in India going forward. Like India, the HDA that I described has a lot of technical partners coming in and they also are started to do quite good work. So I think career opportunities is quite good, but it's a very particular field.
Sir, is there any particular professional degrees required, like any specialization in health technology, PG specialization, or only knowledge?
Not really. No. If you have, if you are asking me very particularly from modeling, you do want more of a quantitative element. So like economics, statistics, or health economics kind of degrees are more preferred from a modeling point of view. But if the companies don't really bother too much of degrees, as long as their students are like, I'm pretty sure here the students will be M.Pharm, like D.Pharm or PhDs and all. This is more than enough. After this, it's mostly about having skills. So the skill element you can improve through reading more. Like the NICE website has a lot of stuff. You have to see the HDA website. And you also have to do some courses like Coursera is there. Coursera has a lot of courses. So something like PGI Chandigarh does an introduction to basic health economics and all. So those are the courses like how your students improve their skills, because when you come for an interview, suppose I am taking an interview, I will not really bother as long as you are an M.Pharm, MPH, MSc in statistics, economics, that's fine. No one bothers with the degrees. It's mostly about skills. And in the questions, there will be some technical rounds also. If you can fulfill those skills and all, then you will be hired. So that's That's the one.
Okay, Swapna Maheshwari, expecting questions. Nagasri.
I can't hear you properly. Can you be a little bit louder?
I'm conducting a meta-analysis.
Okay.
So I want to evaluate the already existing processes. How to evaluate those things?
So basically, see, in meta-analysis and basically an output of systematic review, right? So to do a proper systematic review and meta-analysis, don't jump the steps. That's the first advice I will give. It is called systematic because it follows a systematic path. So make sure your PICO format is very well structured. If it's not well structured, you will like really, like even if you give some numbers in your meta-analysis, that will be questioned. Suppose you go for peer review, suppose you come to an academic person or come to someone like us, we'll really like question it like anything. So your PICO has to be very, very structured. It, like suppose you are doing for hypertension. I'm not sure what you are doing. It cannot be simply hypertension, very honestly. It has to be like adult patients suffering from hypertension also has certain categories. This hypertension, after taking prior treatment through something like one class of drugs, your population has to be very, very specific, and the geographical setting also. Like if you might not get for too much of literature, then you may expand it, but that's how your population has to be structured. Then you also have to, like a student or an academics will not really have a clinical trial going on like a pharma company. So you have to go with the intervention and comparator also clearly. And then you have to see for outcome, what do you want to this thing. Only after your PICO is clear, then you will you can go into the databases and you can limit your search. As a student, I'll say PubMed, Ovid, or like Google Scholar. 2-3 databases are more than enough. For obviously, for when you come to job line, you have to do a thorough database search, but do a database search of 2-3 and then try to go into the meta-analysis part. So obviously this requires proper like steps. I cannot like go into depth there, but the PICO is one that I'll suggest you to really make sure that it's robust and it's very clear.
Okay. Okay. Thank you, sir. Okay, anybody? Sir, is it required system? Is it required a project of systematic review and meta-analysis? Does it help for to face the interview?
Yes. So in fact, skill wise, these are two different domains that are considered in all these consultancies and
Yes.
corporate pharma. So either you have skills in one of them. It's like you don't really require for both. It's very difficult. Even for me, I'm very honestly, I'm not a systematic review person. I know the overall concepts, but I don't do systematic reviews. My part is in health economics modeling.
Yes.
So you have to specialize in one. Even in those specialization, I'm not saying that you have to be an expert in the complete step. If you are very good with the database search, there's a search strings, that's also more than enough at the initial stage of your career. Like you can, like if you can just write up the PICO proposal question very well, that is also very much okay at the initial part. So because it's even for us, it's a learning stage, we keep learning and all. So you have to concentrate. And there is a very good course of Introduction to Systematic Review and Meta-Analysis in Coursera. It's a free course. And if you use the certificate, you can get it for like 2,000-3,000 rupees. I think you get from John Hopkins and all. It's a very good course. So I'll suggest the students to.
Where that is, sir? Where that course?
Coursera. So COU
Okay.
Coursera. And it's like Introduction to Systematic Review and Meta-Analysis. So students can actually do that course. It's a very good course actually.
Okay. And what you suggest about like career opportunity is more in HU or PU also?
I think I'll say a well-paying good career opportunity is in HUR. I think it's in India, it's still an evolving field, and I think it is not really a saturated field. So you will have like in HEOR, especially in the evidence synthesis part, companies are coming, and like a lot of companies, they are not getting good candidates. I can be very sure about that. So if people, they really do well, then they have a good career ahead. Someone has asked the question, how to overcome hurdles while writing in academic aspect. You just have to follow the steps. If you don't follow the steps, it's difficult. So, and you have to like at the start, just take one example of a good published systematic review in good journals, like British Medical Journal and all. See how they have written, and try to break it down into, okay, this is the population, this is the intervention and all. And if you actually start reading, you will see that they are quite, they go into a very micro level, like the population is defined very particularly. So that's how it's done actually. So PICO is the one, concentrate on the PICO and the research question. That's the first part I'll suggest to all the students.
Okay,
Any other
anybody?
question?
Sir, is there any specific courses in HEOR, sir? For example, any degree certificate, any specific certification course in HEOR?
I think Marksman under Amit Dank, they are doing something on certification. But these are, I will suggest you to, like, if you want to concentrate on one aspect like systematic review, first do the Coursera one, and then you will start finding that in Coursera and all, there are actually like how to write manuscript, how to write academic reports. There are different courses which come in. How to do, like, I'm pretty sure Metaanalysis has a different courses going on.
Okay.
Please also check ICMR websites and all. They like pre-COVID times, they used to conduct, and Public Health Foundation of India, they used to conduct different courses. So Public Health Foundation of India, PHFI, and ICMR, they do conduct physical courses also. Now it might be online, but I have not really seen. So these are like 5-day courses and all, where they go in depth into each aspect.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you for your time, sir. You have given more information regarding HDA and opportunities. So
Sure.
now I'm going to conclude. I would like to welcome Nagas to read the vote of thanks.
Thank you. I was very glad to give
Thank you,
this.
sir. Thank you for your time. We in the screen just is reading vote of thanks.
Yeah.
Okay, good system.
Okay, good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon.
It's my pleasure to conclude today's International Virtual Conference on Pharmacoeconomics and Outcomes Research. I firstly thank our principal, sir, Professor Ramarao Nadandla, and YD Anjaneyulu, sir, the president of ISPA Chalpati Educational Society, for providing an opportunity to conduct this type of events. And I also want to thank all the speakers for sharing their vast knowledge with us on health economics research and also pharmacoeconomical outcomes research with us. And I hope everyone utilize it well. And I also thank everyone for attending this event, and also request for further involvement with our institution events.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Thank
it
you.
is, I think more than 500 participants has participated in this event. Most of participants YouTube and Zoom. So from morning, pharmacoeconomics and outcome research and health economics outcome research, HDA, Aditya Chauhan and you has covered more information. Indian sector, we have given information. We don't know what exactly. I thought it's only, Madam has mentioned only some HDA limited is there, government sector, but you have mentioned there are some other corporate sectors also providing.
Yes.
Yes. That's what we have gained knowledge. So last but not least, the most of delegates are looking for e-certificate. The e-certificate is the registered participants are going to receive feedback link to their respective mail IDs. So just send your feedback and get the e-certificate. Okay, thank you for your time, sir.
Thank you to all the participants, and you can contact sir. Sir is in contact with me. And if there are any particular questions, then I can answer through email. So
okay, sir.
Thank you everyone.
Yeah, I'm very thankful to our dynamic and visionary principal, Professor Ramaranathanla, and management Vaivyangal Garu, and my co-staff, and especially ISPAR Education Chapter President Nagasri and ISPAR India Amrapali Chapter Professor Ramaranathanla has cooperated me and communicated to all speakers and made me Zoom Pro and made lively. Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. I'm ending the session. Thank you very much.
Yes. Okay.